What's up, beautiful people? It's your girls, Leanne. I'm getting blissed out with my soul sister from another mister, which gives me great pleasure to welcome Jaisri Lambert to our show. Good morning.
Good morning, my dear. How are you?
Good, so good. So this is our Shedding into Soul Culture podcast number 16. We are utilizing our time and space to talk about topics that come up through both of our studies back and forth. One about the knowledge that Jayshree has, and then while I'm diving in deeply with my spiritual enlightenment with Shiva Shakti, these questions come up. And this week, after we had our last discussion about integrating the divine masculine and feminine with Ayurveda, during my reading this week and during my inquiry with yoga and the Prakriti and the Purusha studies of Shiva and Shakti and how those cosmic energies they work together, I came across the seven types of the Prakriti that are experienced and mixed with those three doshas. So something that I felt so interestingly just gave me a beautiful highlight, like what this all means on a deeper level of somebody who is got the background and the knowledge on it that can shed light on this. So Jayshree, I'm going to hand it over to you to bless us with your awareness about these seven types.
Well, thank you, my dear. And we'll start with a small prayer to Sri Ganesh. Om Gananam Tva Ganapatim Havamahe Kavim Kavinam Upamastravastamam Jeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspatanaha Shrunvanu Tibi Sidasadanam Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Siddhi Buddhi Shakti Sahita Shriman Mahaganadipataye Namo Namaha Nirvignam Kuru.
Mm,
So
thank you.
this brief prayer puts me in mind of my benefactor, Vaidya Vasant Lad, who has taught me most everything that we're about to share together. And his Ishta Devata is Sri Ganesh. So, in remembrance of him, in invocation of his great influence in my life, in providing this knowledge and entrusting me as a keeper of the knowledge, sharer of the knowledge. And by your kind invitation, we're able to open the door together to these seven Prakriti types and what is the meaning of these combinations and permutations. So let us go a little bit back into the concept of, first of all, Purusha and Prakriti. So, Purusha, the pre existing conscious passive awareness. Some people may say God, but God can be a dividing word. So, actually, Purusha is an all inclusive, all pervasive uh, phenomenon and is in fact nameless, though we give a name Purusha for a type of understanding so that we can at least try to get our teeny tiny mind, buddhi, individual intellect, around the idea of this nameless, formless, all pervasive phenomenon called Purusha. So the Sat Purusha, the ultimate pre existing truth, is said to have generated itself into the creation, into Prakriti, the manifested nature, the myriad forms of all creation, which is continuing to this day in an expansive paradigm that light is ever extending, light is ever increasing and radiating. And it is enlivened by sound. So, light and sound, being the two primordial principles, lead us to understand our individual prakriti or constitutional nature and how it might predetermine and guide us with regards to our predispositions towards fault. So, fault is described as dosha, which is a combination again and permutation of the Panchamahabhutas, the five great constructing elements. So just setting the scene for our discussion today, which is that the entire creation is said to be composed of different variables of the five great constructing elements: ether, air, fire, water, and earth, which are by no means separate. We name them separately for ease of understanding. They are entirely integrated, and we name them according to their dominance in any particular manifestation. For example, with Vata, we know that Vata's characteristics are dryness, lightness, mobility, subtlety. We know that uh, Vata is very fleeting, changeable, adaptable, fresh. It brings vitality as prana. It brings sensory awareness. And it brings as well the movement and coordination of life phenomenon. So we also know that Pitta dosha is a combination of primarily fire and water elements, whereas Vata is primarily a combination of ether and air elements. I say primarily because all five elements exist in all the creation, but we're going to discuss about the ratios, how it relates to our personal life and health. So Vata, mostly ether and air principle, Pitta, mostly fire and water principle. So fiery characteristics of Pitta dosha are that it is hot, sharp, penetrating, sour, spreading, liquid, soft, and it is prone to inflammatory conditions because of heat factor. So then Kapha dosha, the third one to consider today, is primarily an expression of water and earth elements together. So water and earth elements bring stability, adhering factor, sticky factor, gluey, muddy factor. Kapha is thick, heavy, dense, and it's stable as well. So when we see these characteristics in our different natures as we're born from the parents with the genetic factor, first of all, we have the simple Vata dominant person, Pitta dominant person, and Kapha dominant person. So let's take a peek at these three. So Vata person is mostly prone to dryness. They're often thin, creative individuals because their mind is very mobile. They do have a difficulty in meditating at first, of course, always only at first, because their mind is very mobile, changeable, adaptable, fleeting here and there, and not necessarily having the skill of concentration very easily. So Pitta person is generally hot, fiery, warm. They tend to leadership. They tend to be bright, brilliant, penetrating minds because they're researchers, doctors, healers, policemen. They keep order. They maintain knowledge. They are developing wisdom. So Kapha person in general is much stouter, square type of individual, very stable, reliable. They're prone to diseases of overweight, perhaps diabetes. They may be having lipomas, which are fatty deposits. And they're very predictable people, unlike Vata people who are very unpredictable. And we might say Uranus aligned, whereas Kapha may be more sort of Taurus aligned in the sense of these are sweeping generalizations that help us to understand the general incarnation type and which are our genetic influences, our value systems of the soul, because this our incarnation, of course, is a journey of the soul. So when we take birth, we take a body and mind that is inherently set for life. through our genetics. But through time, the agent of Kala, we have the evolutionary process in which we undergo childhood, more Kapha dominant influenced. Then we go through after menopause, after menarche, uh, and on through to menopause. We go through Pitta phase of life, working, livelihood, standing in the world, responsibility, etc. Then later in life comes the Kapha dominant era after uh, aging, hair turns dry, white, sparse, and forgetfulness can begin to come. So these are three Vata type dominant, Pitta type dominant, and Kapha type dominant that adhere to the main characteristics of the dosha. Now, dosha, of course, is part of the pralabdha karma, the destiny karma. We can modify it, but it changes only with very good deeds or very bad deeds. So let's keep in mind that for most of us, our prakriti will remain rather stable throughout life. Means we can predict our diseases through our prakriti tendencies. Now let's look at the secondary types, because there are again three secondary types. So
Mm.
first is the Vata Pitta type, then the Vata Kapha type, and then the Pitta Kapha type. So these where there's dual nature. My teacher, Dr. Ladd, has very equal expression of Vata and Pitta.
Mm.
And then Vata and Kapha is another possibility, and Pitta Kapha, dual type. So these people have, let's say Vata Pitta in the beginning, they're typically scholarly, they're typically very sensitive, they're typically very uh, inclusive. Any dual type is able to relate to double the number of people in an inherent sense, in a sort of a vibrational capacity sense.
Mm.
So Vata Pitta types may be authors, they may be creative types, they may be channeling of the higher consciousness into recognizable, orderly. This is the pitta part, the recognizable and orderly part of them that is able to do tasks. First of all, download them from the cosmic mind and then organize them, pitta factor,
Mm.
into, say, books or works of art or helpful contributions in a scholarly sense, in a poetic sense, artistic sense to humanity.
Mm.
Then Vata Kapha type is really quite difficult. They're very opposite because qualities of Vata, as we know, dry, light, dispersing, mobile, quick, is absolutely opposite to Kapha, which is stable, dense, heavy. Uh, and so the person with Vata Kapha constitution has a lot more disparity and difficulty in integrating their personality, their choices, preferences, their relationships, their habits are fluctuating at times and stable at times. There's a bit of a war going on within them. They have inner arguments, they have inner conflicts, and they have difficulty reconciling these two very disparate parts of themselves. So one or other usually wins out, most often Kapha because it's so stable, and person can gain weight, develop gallstones, kidney stones, can develop uh, growths, and in order to help balance this Vata tendency to uh, being scattered, being forgetful, being um, having difficulty focusing and concentrating. So this putting on weight is a way that they think they're going to stabilize, but of course it doesn't work that way.
Mm.
Vata has to be balanced in and of itself. Kapha has to be balanced in and of itself, and Pitta too, because there's though they may have Vata and Kapha dominant, they also have Pitta, but it may be in a recessive ratio to these others in their constitutional nature, and therefore provide a fulcrum or a balancing factor. So these people exercise as their saving grace. If they become lifelong exercisers, they keep their both Vata and Kapha in balance together and live happily ever after. Then Pitta Kapha type, the last of the dual types, Pitta Kapha. So Pitta Kapha person is quite common in today's population, especially older people, because older people will begin to increase in weight a little bit after menopause. Not Vata individual, they'll stay slim throughout the life and have scanty appetite, changeable appetite, irregular appetite, whereas Pitta Kapha individual with dual nature, with the bright, brilliant leadership tendency from Pitta, but it can be balanced quite well with the stability, reliability, and predictability of Kapha. So, Kapha person, if they say they'll show up at 8 o'clock, they'll be there at 5 to 8, 10 to 8, and they'll be ready and prepared. Pitta person will be sort of, oh, I can make it in the nick of time. And so they have again these two features, dominant features, where they're truly expressing their heritage, their genetic factor, their destiny factor in ways that ultimately are for their best spiritual interest. Then the seventh and final type here is the Vata Pitta Kapha in equal proportion. So you would think that somehow these people have an easier time to balance themselves, but in fact, this VPK rather equal 3-3-3 ratios being Vata 3 in the pulse, Pitta 3, Kapha 3. These people do have a tremendous delicacy in balancing their constitutional nature, because if they go out of balance, they become very distressed and very unable to function normally, and are discomforted, confused, and very much out of sorts when any one small imbalance occurs in their pulse readings. So this is the overview. Yeah.
While listening, there was some things coming up in my mind. I'm just thinking, like, for anybody that has regular doshas that are dominant, we also have the other doshas that are there. We change our diet to maintain that so that everything's in harmony for that dosha. Then when we start mixing the doshas, then it comes into like working more with more than one, in balancing that with the diet, and then thinking of a three. Now, the other things that were coming in my mind while we're exploring this subtle understanding of ourselves, of the Prakriti, which is the energy of the feminine, right?
It is the creation in its entirety. So yes, it is governed by the female principle. The first being, according to Kabir, was Adi, a woman. This is quite different from the Christian concept that the first being was Adam, a man. The Adi version of creation that says that from the ocean of milk, which is very Asian, Indian type of creation mythology, that the first being was Adi, and she then collected her menstrual blood and had a daughter. So that made sense to me, because you can't have progeny without the female. So it had to come first, and then males were generated later from the daughter. First, she had a male child. So yeah, this does lead to a lot of philosophical wonderings, no doubt. But to your question of the food program, let's say the person is Pitta Prakriti, but they have Kapha imbalance, then they would follow dual program, which is Pitta and Kapha together. So they would take the food guidelines, highlight everything common to pacifying Pitta and Kapha, and that would be their individualized food program.
Yeah, I just see that there's a lot to this in the discovery of understanding. If you are able to be read by, say, a doctor like yourself, and like I would say, okay, I'm dominant Pitta, for example. Then I would follow my morning routine at a different time. I would do my meditations at a different time according to what I've learned with Ayurveda. But then once you start having those mixtures and then working with that, it's like it's just a harmony of figuring it out once you feel like you're in harmony.
Yes, for example, mind is always pervading. So it's the decisions made by the mind's tendencies, Vata, Pitta, Kapha, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. These are the deciding factors with regards to our, say, daily routine decisions. So in the beginning, when we're trying to implement one, we may set the alarm, for example, to get up early. So that might be a Pitta person. So Vata person would probably not set their alarm. They just want to wake up at a random time when they feel rested, which is not a bad thing. None of these are good or bad. It's just that we are different. So
Mm.
with the morning routine, for example, it is generally the same for most people, but does have to adapt. For example, a Vata person will put in more time with meditation practice, the dhyan. Then the Kapha person will put in more practice with the pranayama and asana, the breathing practices and exercises. They need to have their light sweating and then shower, then do their meditation practice, and they have to do it at in such a way that they won't fall asleep again because of
Mm.
tamas guna, heavy quality. They have a tendency to love sleep, go into deep sleep very easily. They're very compassionate, forgiving people. So typically in their mind, they don't have a huge long story like a Vata person does, or a huge to-do list like a Pitta person does in their
Mm.
mind. So yes, their practice must adapt to their nature and be suited to their nature. At the same time, there are commonalities for everyone. Amrit Vela between 3 and 6 a.m. applies to all humanity, regardless of constitution, but we have to be very forgiving with ourselves to adapt accordingly. In other words, don't Pitta person should not beat themselves up when they're not able to keep to the perfect ideal routine that they've read about. Oh, I read this is the perfect ideal. So now I want to do this. Well, now to align with that is not so easy. It takes a lot of patience, a lot of letting go, a lot of surrender of ego to the higher consciousness. So we have to have allowances for our mental nature, emotional nature as well, so that we
Mm.
don't again beat ourselves up if we're unable to stay awake. uh, Soon we'll get the knack of going to bed much earlier, sleeping very much earlier, being alert during Amrit Vela, so that we can really make the most of the dinacharya, the daily routine, especially morning practices.
I love how this is feeding into self-acceptance, because of what people go through on the journey with awakening. And I mean, some things come up for me personally because as I hear of all these things, I'm still really, I'm really excited now to know how many doses am I mixed or am I single? I've never ever had the until this week reading up about the combinations, had that exposed to me. And I still feel like, it just gives us more the finer awareness of our individuality, just like astrology does, right? Like you go into your time of birth and then where the sun or the moon is, and whether you have Vedic or you have Western, and then where you're living on the planet, how it's all affecting you. These are the personal experiences that the universe, I think, present to us so that we can better ourselves. And what comes up for me in this dialogue is also relationships, because I feel like our tendencies with our doshas will sympathize with either healthy or toxic relationships. We'll probably also learn about the power of love and what that means in holding space for other people with different doshas, that also energetically, once those energies do have a merge or have relationships, if those doshas also play a role in, the effects too, because here we're talking about a mixture of nature, of Prakriti, but then how about the nature of our sharing of love with others and family and the vibrations? Right? I don't know if you want to give a little awareness about that, but I think that that's also like something that came up in my mind while discussing.
Yes, well, this is really getting into an interesting tangent because there's a lot there to unpack. Relationships, naturally, we are all in relationship with one another, whether Vata to Pitta to Kapha internally or Vata Pitta Kapha in another individual or individuals in a family setting or a group setting, community, country, etc. And finally, our global community as well. We're all in relationship, whether we remember it or not. That's why in Native Indian tradition, they'll often acknowledge all my relations, which is a very powerful acknowledgement of the fact that one cell is always in communication with the entire cosmos, and that it is a phenomenon of relationships. So this leads to thinking about karma, our individual accrued karma to create a birth at a particular time. We're incarnated now. We don't know about whether we were incarnated in 1528 or whether we will be incarnated in 1970 or 2075. We don't know, but we're alive now, and we have the concurrent relationships of other incarnates of our current time. So we do purify through the mirror of relationship. Our karmas do become, from having dosha, having fault, having imperfection, having changeability, we do come to undergo, say, for example, in marriage relationship, the fiery purifications where anger, judgment, lust, attachment, they all come into focus. Same with the Vata communications, clarity of communications, all comes under evolutionary influence, especially in intimate relationship, because we're all after the same love, unconditional love, but we go about it uniquely. We have a unique family of origin configuration, and we have a unique family of union configuration where there's attraction to the partner or arrangement by the priest or Jyotishi with the suitable partner. And we're again embarking on the path of unconditional love. But in the case of an arranged marriage, this is prior knowledge. In the case of a love marriage, it may not be prior knowledge. We may not have the guiding light of what is the purpose of relationship as the purifications of the unconditional love within us. And when we see day to day, person says, but you didn't tell me that. Person says, well, look, I like the forks in this drawer, not that drawer. And the Kapha person says, take it easy, you know, shake it off, like Taylor Swift. And and you want to get it done now. So these differences are there, and we have to be with it, see it in our daily meditation, understand how we can dance more harmoniously with ourselves and the partner, how we can shed everything that is unlike unconditional love and begin to really live from that core, which will bring us happiness, harmony, commitment, longevity, and true satisfaction. And the marriage relationship, of course, is just for this life until death do we part. It's really a temporary contract.
Yeah, I can see through journeying myself through this life, and I'm 46 now, and I guess where you are with your age, right? And I can see in the enlightenment aspect of myself when there's a lot of aloneness, what I am, who I am, how I experience myself, and then the togetherness and what do I experience of myself, say in my Pitta, Vata, Kapha aspects. And I feel like, you know, the call, like when you say we are called to purify each other, it makes sense because there's people that walk in my life like that I don't even believe are going to have such a huge impact on me, but made my relationship even with my kids better just based on having a soul connection with a younger human. and we don't see our driving force of our goal driven mind and where the matrix is in the reality, that pushes us into this personality, where we're not even present at times, right? So I feel like, yeah, it's right. Like the reality of us helping each other, certain friends will make a huge impact. I've seen that throughout my life. Now, it also, the dynamics of these friendships are like you said, their nature and your nature could be totally different. And then that's where the real work comes with being unconditional.
Yes, no, absolutely. And you talk about the purifications through the mirror of relationship. Our teacher defined marriage as taking a companion in life to help one another to know God. Now,
Mm,
how can we help anybody else to know God? Truly,
mm,
if we apply our vivek, the discrimination to this matter, we honestly can't influence anyone else. What we can do is our own work and shine as an example or not.
mm,
And of course, every day being many moments of not. So, as long
mm,
as the forgiveness of all wrongs, real and imagined, is there in the heart of both partners, then they will see God in one another in that mirror relationship. Husband will see a goddess, a wife will see God in the husband. Instead of, oh, God, can't you just pick up your laundry? Or whatever it is, right, that in our personality level,
mm,
these things will irk us or disappoint us, depends on the mental configurations. Disappointing is pitta, a pitta personality trait, where the person has an ideal, something is perfect, then what is not living up to that mark. So there's a differential between what is and what's ideal. So pitta person has this comparison constantly going on, good, better, best. Now, when we have a space like that, it will fill with something. So in the case of Pitta person, it tends to fill with judgment, criticism, because they're still self-critical. So they will criticize the other person, especially the sweetheart, near and dear, or the close relatives, until that point where there is a shift in the overall evolution of the person through the grace of time, that there's a realization, okay, unconditional love is the means and the end and the all in all. So why don't I just, surrender to that and do my best to integrate that? Now, from that moment onwards, there's a greater ease because it's in the awareness. But still, it's scriptures like Gita, Bhagavad Gita, will show sometimes it's a battle. We have to actually kill our cousin, means our near and dear, our attachment, our ego, our anger, our dosha, whatever it is, it has to die. It has to not be revivable.
so good.
Oh,
Wonderful way to finish this podcast today. We're down to our last moment here. Friends, I want you to know this friend of mine fills gaps like a heartbeat for me. And I'm so grateful for you, Jaisri, my beautiful friend of existence. And please reach out if you have any questions to her, direct message about Ayurveda, her courses. You can see all in her profile. And we'll see you again next week.
wonderful. Thank you, Latika.
You're welcome. Namaste, love.
Sahana Bhavatu, Sahana Punaktu, Sahaviryam Karvavahe, Tejasvina Vaditamastu, Mahavidvishavahe, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Har Har Mahadev. Thank you, Jean. Thank you.